Morning. We have a quorum and it is the appointed time for the meeting. Welcome to the meeting. Today, in the morning, we will have 4 hours. In the 2018-19 legislative year, up till the last meeting, we have approved 19 items totaling $110.3664 billion. There are 5 papers on the agenda today. Papers 1, 2, 4, 5 were on the agenda for the last meeting. The third item is a new proposal from the administration. These 5 items involve a total funding request of $7.0173 billion. If all these are approved, we would have approved 24 items in total involving $117.3837 billion. If we discount the block funding for land acquisition and computerization, which total $5.08 billion, then works would total $112.3829 billion. I'd like to remind members that you have direct or indirect pecuniary interests relating to the items under discussion today. Please disclose the nature of that interest before you speak according to ROP 83A. I also like to draw your attention to ROP 84 with regard to voting requirements when there is direct pecuniary interests involved. Item 1, 50 CG, provision of an additional district cooling system at the Kai-Tak development. I'd like to refer you to PWSC 2019-21. This paper recommends upgrading to Cat A of this project at an estimated cost of $4269.3 million in money of the day prices. On the 14th of May at this meeting, we started to discuss this paper and will continue today. Attending for this item, we have the same batch of officials as we had last time, and I won't read out the names again. You have the list in front of you. I'd like to see whose turn it is. Mr. Gary Fan is in the queue. 4 minutes for you, first round. Can we have the mic on for Mr. Gary Fan? Hello? Yes? You have it. Thank you, Chair. In February, at the development panel, when we discussed this item, I put forward an argument and I criticized the administration. At first, when they applied for $30 billion in block grant for Kai-Tak sports ground, they did not include the DCS, and that was unreasonable. You are applying for $4269.3 million, and this actually includes DCS for the Kai-Tak Sports Park, where even if it is only partly related to the sports park, your approach is to be questioned. You are cutting up the project of Kai-Tak Sports Complex when you come to LegCo, and the objective effect is that this would amount to a de facto budget overrun. You are cutting up the budget in order to deceive the Legislative Council. You did not come clean and give us the entire picture when you first applied for $30 billion. What logic, what rationale do you have for cutting up the budget for the DCS for Kai-Tak? In what other project did you adopt the same approach previously? Under Secretary. Thank you for the question. When we sought to develop Kai-Tak, and it is just not just this time, in fact, with regard to other government projects, including government buildings and other projects, the DCS will not be included in the project sum. All along, the DCS for Kai-Tak has been regarded as an independent item, so we are just doing what we have always been doing. I'm not talking about the DCS, I'm talking about the way you apply for funding. Now you go for a design, build and operate contract but then we gave you the money and then you did not include certain part of the project, and now you come back to seek funding for that particular part, because at that time when you decided on having a DBO contract, you did not separate the contract into two items and take them to LegCo. Under Secretary, let me explain again. This time, we are asking for funding support to add another DCS. This is because when we did our sums previously, we could not predict that there would be increased density of development at Kai Tak. And secondly, the scale of the new acute hospital has been much bigger than originally conceived. The same goes for the sports park itself. Well, the original plan was made many years ago and we did not have all the concrete information, but now we have a big project and therefore we need a much bigger cooling system. The old design will not be able to do the job, and we need to build a new system to meet the need. So it is not that we deliberately did not separate the project items. This is actually because we are having a much bigger resultant project. Under Sec, I can understand what you are saying, but you are not answering my question. This item targets the Kai Tak Sports Park. It is an additional DCS for it. When you first decided on the DBO contract approach, you must have anticipated this, or else how are we going to approve your item? We were not given the exact price tag, but then you keep coming back. You say you are redesigning the project. You say there are things that you did not anticipate would happen, and then whether you call this additional funding, you call this budget overrun, whatever, but I think you never did that before. Sorry, Mr. Fan, your time is up. Actually, the question or a similar one has been asked last time. The Kai Tak Sports Park is only taking up part of this particular funding request. I think a similar question was answered last time. Your time is up, so please wait for your second round. Mr. Eddie Chu, first round, 4 minutes. Thank you. I can ask the question from another angle. It's a similar question. I dug up another LegCo paper on Kai Tak, which was submitted in 2017. It is PWSC 2017-18-2. On page 7 of that paper, there is a breakdown for the $31.9 billion. We have building services, $3.649 billion. And the note says building services include air conditioning installations. This is the first piece of information. And then there is another $300 million for extra green installations. And you have the automatic monitoring system for chilled water circulation. Well, I have reviewed the entire Kai Tak paper, but it said nothing about district cooling. That's quite strange. I'd like to ask you about those 2 points I mentioned. That is building services within the $31.9 billion, including chilled water circulation, automatic monitoring system, and also the air conditioning installations. What were included in the original funding request? Is it that what Mr. Gary Fan said has happened now because you have withheld the information? Or is it that those 2 items are just part of the expenditure for district cooling, but you hid the entire information from us that in fact you would need another $4.2 billion. I don't know whether anyone in your team can answer the question or it will be up to the permanent secretary to answer. So what did the original sum include? Why did you not tell us that you would need another DCS? The DCS at Kai-Tak is regulated by law. The law stipulates that all public and business facilities must use a district cooling system at Kai-Tak. Thank you, Chair, and the question. It seems members have a misunderstanding that this DCS is to be built for Kai-Tak Sports Park. But as I said last time, and as I was saying, there were three other factors: increased density of NAH and also the Kai-Tak Sports Park. The Kai-Tak Sports Park is only going to use a quarter of the system, and 44% would be provided because of the increased scale for NAH. So Kai-Tak is not the main reason. Okay, if it is 25%, then it should just be $1 billion. And the member also asked that originally, the Kai-Tak paper also included air conditioning and chilled water circulation systems. Well, these specific technical questions might be answered better by EMSD staff in a moment. But the design is such that all internal AC system of the building or facility would be provided by the building or the facility itself. And the DCS is to supply those systems with chilled water so that chilling would not be done by the building itself. In the building projects, all the pipes would have been laid. That is the situation. As the chairman said, the administration said much early on that in Kai-Tak, all government buildings must use a DCS. And even non-residential developments or private developments in the land lease conditions, there are conditions saying that they must provide installations to link up with the DCS. So this is an overall government policy, and it is nothing special for Kai-Tak. Time is up. Dr. Cheng Chung Tai, 4 minutes. Thank you. I'd like to follow up the same question. The main issue is in December, on the 28th of December last year, the administration tendered for Kai-Tak, and the company was awarded, and it was New World, and its company set up with another company of the same group. In fact, I agree with what the other two members said. Let me put the question this way. The undersec said just now that as long as it is not for non-residential facilities, the DCS at Kai-Tak is nothing special. That in projects of this type, the DCS will be used. Now, I like to ask for specifics. Since you have already tendered for the project, the administration is taking up the cost for providing DCS at Kai-Tak. Have all this be written into the tender documents? Chairman, the costing and expenditure of running Kai-Tak would be the responsibility of the Kai-Tak Sports Park Limited, in other words, the company who will run the park. How would the cost be apportioned? Can we know anything about that? Or is this related at all? Please stop the timer. I don't want to use up your time.
I just want to provide info.
Actually, I'd like to provide you with certain background information. I was the chairman of that Bills Committee on the DCS, and I can give you some information. As was said, but I will just repeat it. At Kai-Tak, all public facilities and business facilities, even if they are private, all these must use the central DCS at Kai Tak. They must use the chilled water from the DCS, but it is not free. There will be a charge. I won't go into the details here. I think the officials might want to explain. Therefore, whether it is before or after tendering, the central DCS must be used, and it is a very clear requirement. This is in the law. On the other hand, the cooling system will be built in phases, and I believe that must have been laid out clearly before. I'm just providing the information so that you can focus on the issue. Understand? Thank you for the question, and I thank the chairman for the information furnished. As the chairman said, and as I was explaining, at Kai Tak, all public facilities must use the district cooling system. I have not read the tendering documents in detail, but since this is the law and this is the government policy, I'm sure this will be stated clearly in the tender documents. And as I was explaining, the division of labor can be said to be that the DCS will connect chilled water circulation to the facilities, so there can be connection to the DCS. All the pipes and the controlling systems would have to be provided by the facility itself, and it is not to be provided by the DCS. I believe, therefore, that this will be the same for facilities at Kai Tak. Its own AC system will be provided by the facilities themselves. I'm sure the tender documents are designed this way. Any other officials who would like to add? Oh, you can follow up later or now. Chairman, I don't know whether the information can be supplied after the meeting, because after all, the contract will run for 25 years for operation of Kai Tak, and 5 years would be for construction. So the question is, I in fact want to forestall future disputes, because the expenditure incurred by the DCS should become part of the operating expenses of the company winning the tender. Mr. Lau or Mr. Lam, Mr. Lau, Deputy Secretary for FST. Well, the Kai Tak Sports Park is going to be a DBO contract, and there is a tender process. As the Undersec for the Environment said, that the tender documents will state clearly that they must use the DCS. When tenderers come forward knowing that condition, they will reflect that in the tender price. And as for the operating cost, they should have factored that in by including the DCS. If they don't use the DCS, I'm sure the tender prices would be higher, because they might have to provide that facility themselves, and the operating cost would be higher. Next, Fernando Zhang, first round, 4 minutes. Chairman, that being the case, we of course know that you must have anticipated this.
But when you submit the application for funding for the the sports park, you didn't mention that. Certainly they had mentioned that. Well, when we consider approving the funding, they didn't mention that the DCS will be additional. Now you put it before us, and then we have the impression, certainly, that you just try to chop up the whole project into pieces in order to slip it through. I think the trend is to chop up large projects into smaller ones so that the costs appear smaller, and you try to hide the cost overrun, and that's unfair. Now you say that's additional, and then last time you said that that was remaining So remaining works last time, and then that wasn't enough. So you say that's an additional item. I hope that you will not do it again in the future. Now, the whole project involves different kinds of infrastructure, and the budget. In the budget, you should have told us that which part has not been included. We are responsible for approving the funding. You need to show us the whole picture. If you don't show us the whole picture, you just chop them up into bits and pieces, then you try to hide something from us. Well, I have to clarify on behalf of the government. In submitting each and every item, we list out all the related costs. As for the DCS, it is responsible for the whole district. It provides cooling to all the buildings within Kai Tak. So it doesn't just belong to the sports park. And therefore, in the sports park item, we do not include the DCS in the cost of the Kai Tak Sports Park. Same for the hospital. We do not include the cost of the DCS in the hospital. The hospital does not need to share the cost of the DCS. That's the government's practice. Now, each item involves many public services. Say, for example, it will use our sewage system, but we will not account part of the sewage cost of the sewage system into the cost of the sports park or the hospital. That's our established practice. In future, if we provide information in response to members' views, we may we'll try to provide more information so as to avoid any misunderstanding. Well, I think he's trying to spin off the argument. The DCS, of course, is not dedicated to the sports park, but that is part of the infrastructure to serve the sports park. As for the pipes, the roads, the sewers, of course, they will not be included in the cost. This one is different. It is different from ordinary infrastructure. Do we have a DCS in the central? No, there isn't any. When you sell land, you will provide a cooling system to the successful bidder. That is part of the infrastructural cost, and therefore you will charge a higher price. You should spell out everything. Your time is up. Well, see if any government official would like to explain the DCS investment. In fact, the users will have to pay for the DCS service. So to answer the question, the Deputy Secretary, or rather the Undersecretary, just two quick points. The DCS is an infrastructure, and we hope in the long run it will be provided all over Hong Kong. But it is difficult for the old areas, and therefore in the new towns such as Hong Shui Kiu, we are considering whether that would be included. That's what we want to do. It's not an isolated case as far as the DCS is concerned. The DCS is not free of charge. A fee is attached. They have to pay a fee. Even for government institutions, they will have to pay the tariff according to usage. There's no difference between the sports park and other government institutions. Well, that's additional cost. You have to spell it out very clearly. Next, Dr. Kwok. We don't have a quorum, please, a quorum call. We need to make a quorum.
Oh, 隔離響緊，我哋響唔到㗎，所以我哋點都要其後先可以打鐘。咁但係我咪都係而家呢個時候計時可以響得。 可以響鐘啊，
Please ring the bell.
PWSC 係打緊鐘呢度，會議室2要8條欄啫嘛。6+1，6個，6+1係。夠法定人數啦。
We now have a quorum. Dr. Kwok, would you please speak? You have 4 minutes. I think the biggest problem is not only with the Environment Bureau. It seems that the biggest problem is about the tender document of the sports park. The problem is there. We believe, or we thought that the tender documents were able to fairly and squarely reflect everything. But we find it really alarming. The sports park is paid by the government, and even the cost of bidding is paid to the bidder. Now is won by New World. You subsidize the business. There is quite a lot of conspiracy between the officials and the business sector, but this is a stark example. And now the second one is the DCS. A quarter, more than $1 billion, is used to subsidize the sports park. At that time, we didn't know who would put in the bid. Now we can see that it is rather biased. Chairman, there is not enough member to make a quorum. We don't have a quorum. They need to respect the meeting. Okay, we stop the bell, and then we start counting again. Right. let us ring the bell to call members to the meeting. Right, we have a quorum. Dr. Kwok, please. Please go on. Thank you, Chairman. I think this practice is worrying. It's no small sum, $29.9 billion and $1 billion here, so altogether $30 billion. And when has the administration become so outrageous and stand at odds with the people and spend these $30 billion in such a way? And because of the arrangement, we have the impression that the government has the intention to wait for the outcome of the sports park tendering exercise before they put the DCS application before us. I think they have already explained that. Well, they have not been able to explain that. Mr. Lau, Dr. Kwok's allegation is serious and is far from the facts. The DCS is a requirement under the law. Why you didn't charge them first? Well, the tender document requires them to use the DCS. It's not a matter of charging them or not. As we have explained, the DCS is responsible for the cooling of all the buildings within the district. In each item, we do not share the cost of the DCS. If we follow the members' logic, if we require each of the project to share the cost, then we don't need any funding application before you. Say the hospital, the sports park, their construction costs will be escalated, and members will not be able to know the cost of the whole DCS. And the DCS costs, you allege that we will try to spread them within the projects and try to hide the cost. Well, you can charge them. You know that a quarter of the chilling will be used by them. And to be fair, you need to charge them. You will not do that if it is your business. You just give the money to people's business. Just now, the chairman and also the undersecretary explained that it is a charging system under the DCS. They have to pay the cost of using the DCS, and we will recover costs. The undersecretary, he has overrun. Please be brief. As I've explained this time and at the previous meeting under the law, using the DCS will require the paying of the charge. Even if it is a government facility or government building, the government building will have to pay the DCS, the tariff for the DCS, the water and power tariffs. for the DCS. That's the same for the sports park. That's the same for other government facilities. Next, Mr. Wu Chi-wai, your first round, 4 minutes. Well, I have 2 questions. The first one is this. In the Kai-Tak DCS, is it necessary to manage a new boundary? Under the DCS, a requirement that scope of the DCS is kept within the boundary. So have you expanded the boundary? And if so, if it is so, can you tell me to what extent has the boundary been extended so that we need the additional expansion of the DCS? The next question is for the Secretary or the Permanent Secretary. On the 28th of December last year, there was the paper on remaining works of the Kai-Tak DCS, and we asked about the details, about the fine details. We asked in calculating the DCS chilling capacity, did you include all the known projects? At that time, the answer was that all the works items in the area covered by the DCS, everything had been covered. Why you didn't refer to the vehicular testing center, which will be near the DCS area, and it is not provided with any DCS service? The answer was that according to your cooling capacity, you would only be able to deal with all the known development items within the DCS boundary, including the hospital and the sports park, and also the children's hospital. And you said that there would be a certain percentage of excess capacity, and therefore you will provide the DCS service to the Gary godown or warehouse next to the Kai-Tak area. I don't know whether my understanding is correct. Correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm correct, then the new additional cooling needs is the issue. Where does it come from? You have already calculated the DCS according to the known projects at that time. Well, with regard to the boundary of the DCS, there is no change. We need to increase the cooling capacity or chilling capacity because of the new NAH, which is bigger than our original estimate, and also the Kai-Tak Sports Park, and also the new building capacity. The DCS will only provide service to the commercial buildings, not the residential buildings. And the second point is that in the previous paper, you told us that you had already calculated the DCS capacity concerning the 400,000 square meters. They were business buildings. As for the previous paper, my colleague will explain.
Mr. Wong, in the document itself, when we went to the FC in January, the newly added area needs another additional system. In the January meeting, we mentioned that already, Chairman. The meeting did not reach such a conclusion. The remaining project will cover all the cooling system needs as known. But do you mean that you did not know? And when did you know the additional needs? I don't quite understand the question. This part mentioned here is in part of the Kai-Tak development program. Well, we have two documents only recently, and there is quite a huge difference. While the last document did not say that we wouldn't have this part. Well, you said that all the DCS has been included. Well, time is up. Can you briefly explain? Mr. Wong. If you talk about 45 CG, there were assumptions and assumed capacity for design. And so we included everything in our design stage as we knew it. And in 2017, we did not know the happenings that followed. So in 2019, January, we also explained that we need a new system. Mr. Lau, PAS. I'd like to try to explain, and I can defer to my colleagues for supplementary information. The last document, we're talking about the upgrading to Category A of the DCS with a supplementary budgeting. So DCS, when we also upgraded it for the remaining part. The DCS, as proposed, exhausted its capacity, and that is why we need to add additional capacity, and that is this part. And the last one was upgrading it to Category A. Well, last time was your response, and it included all the known cooling needs. And the document was in 2018. Mr. Olohin, we have to count the quorum. So please ring the bell. Mr. Ao, you are asking for the quorum, so you have to stay in the meeting room.
不過我對於有啲委員話咧不滿意。
Some members are unsatisfied with the concurrent meetings, 3 at the same time. And I also mentioned, apart from the big room, we have numbers 1, 2, and 3. And this meeting room can be separated into 2. Why is it that we need several meeting rooms? Because there are different meetings could occur at the same time in parallel, and there is a need for it. So I'm surprised that you feel undersatisfied with the parallel meetings that we have now. We have the quorum is formed. Mr. Olohin, I'd like to raise several points. First of all, the DCS, as we have now, can be discussed at the same time at the meeting. I don't agree to have several items discussed together. But however, this one is related to the KTD. It is also related to the NAH and the sports park. You proposed this item now, and I think that it should be discussed with in relation to the sports park. Now, I have a question as to why do you organize them all together? The development panel at that meeting, you should have mentioned that you should have figures of the capacity needed by the sports park. Well, how do you coordinate with the tender winner? You have a DCS assigned to the company. If there is a problem, is there any agreement or do you have any arrangement for the solution of such issues so that you can properly allow the DCS to properly function to provide energy to the sports park? Well, as for the coverage of the area, it has something to do with the DCS as existed before. And if there are any facilities that would need to use your DCS, does it mean that you would not take them into account for, that is to say, new users, even if you have remaining capacity that could provide energy for the newcomers? Now, as to the technical agreement with the tender winners, I'll ask the EMS to answer. As for the whether the DCS, why should we include these facilities into the DCS? Because it has to do with piping, laying of pipeline, because the pipes were laid down according to the estimated capacity. However, we now see that there is additional needs, huge additional needs from the NH, and we need to add a lot of capacity for the DCS. The sports park also has increased its needs, and the old piping is not sufficient to supply the needs, and that is why we come up with this proposal. Because in the past we can see that the developments now would require additional DCS. How do we put them all together? That's I'll ask the EMS to answer. The DCS coverage is in the ordinance within the KTD. So according to estimation, all the facilities within this area will be supplied with the DCS. As for the agreements, contracts, we have the tender winner, and we require them to have chilled water provision to these the area. While there were problems with the DCS as it existed, and you cannot really guarantee the full functioning. And when breakdowns come up, are there any contingency plans? So you can raise your question again. Mr. Tony Chair, first of all, I'd like to declare I am a member of the task force of the KTD. And this proposal has been discussed in the task group. Apparently, the DCS can bring a lot of benefits, and it is supported by the community. Well, simply put, you are an engineer yourself, Chairman. There is conservation of energy, reduction of carbon emission. These are all the benefits. And also this efficiency benefits. and it is also a stable supply. Of course, maintenance is also important, as mentioned. It is not one single building, but a whole area that is concerned. So I think attention should be paid to the whole system. If I remember well, we have been discussing this for a long time, and we have had phase 1, and it's now up and running. If I remember well, the KTD has also mentioned that for the cooling system, the administration needs this DCS for its development. As for the private sector, when we have land sales or auctioning of land, the non-residential users would also need such a supply. And what about the sports park? As far as I understand, sports park is an administration project, and operation is another matter. For the building of the sports park, well, logically speaking, we should have such a cooling system supply, and that is very clear to all. As to the proposal itself, the administration stated that why is it that we have such a proposal? Because the development of the whole area covers a long period. The Kai-Tak airport has moved. Well, over the last 20 years, there has been a lot of changes and development, evolution. So the KTD has been adjusted several times. For instance, the density of development has been modified. Well, for the estimation in the past, well, you have to have put the public money into good use. So we did not know what, the scale of evolution or development. So now we are looking at whether development as of now would need additional resources. Well, we are now saying that we are now be able to service about 810,000 square meters. And it says that you have an additional 40,000 square meters that you have to cover. Why is it that there has been such an increase? Well, as for the cooling system capacity, I'd like to ask the EMS to reply. The old DSCS covered 170,000 square meters. And now we have some newly added facilities. So we are now need to cover 810,000 square meters. We need an additional system. The commercial area would increase by 40,000 square meters. Well, of course, the administration's projects have all also increased. 40,000 square meters is for commercial area, the addition, and whereas for NHA and the sports park, they would they would cover the other remaining increased area. So you now have a total of 810,000 square meters. Is there any mechanism whether in the future there can be also a coverage of increase in the future in case the area is increased? Well, in our design, we would have a 10% margin for the increase in cooling system capacity. Mr. Chuaitik, ring the bell, please.
好，夠人啦。
Yeah, the quorum is formed. Next member, Mr. Ho Kai-ming, 4 minutes. You are in the first round. I support the additional cooling system, DCS. We visited the area, and we can see that the DCS replaces the air conditioning cooling system with better heat rejection. There are schools now using this DCS, and they are very satisfied because they need not have air conditioning themselves, with also the reduction of cooling facilities, separate cooling facilities. For the sports park, of course, they would need air conditioning. However, the chilled water can help heat rejection so that the engineering facilities could be reduced. For the whole area, would we have enough capacity? Do we need to further expand the capacity? Because we can envisage further increase of uses. Some would mention that you can even extend it to the Kowloon Bay. Engineers explained that if you go beyond the highway, there would be a lot of underground pipes, whether that would be feasible. I'd like to ask if future we need to further increase the capacity. Yeah, thank you. The additional DCS, as the DD has explained, we should have enough capacity for additional space. We also have a 10% reserve or margin. The entire KTD, would we have a further increase of the cooling system capacity with further build-ups? As far as we reply, as far as we know, there is no future such needs. Well, 10% margin could cover any further increase. Well, if we have big development projects, that's another matter. I have another question. This new system would be related to the typhoon shelter because that would improve the water quality. Well, then that would also have a benefit for the whole area. We know that the bacteria existed in the typhoon shelter and is not fit for swimming. However, if the water cooling system goes there to the typhoon shelter, it could improve. Would that improve the water quality in the typhoon shelter? The EMS, Mr. Lai, thank you for the question. That is right. In the design, our plant will be next to the anti-sedimentation facility, and that would be a plant for cooling, and the water will be out in the harbor itself. I don't have the specific figures, but on the whole, it would be helpful for the water quality in the shelter.
In other words, you're going to draw water from the sea, and it should improve the water quality in the typhoon shelter. I hope this project can be embarked upon as soon as possible. Thank you. Eddie Chu, second round, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chair. No one is questioning the DCS itself, so let us get down to specifics. I'd like to ask about the additional capacity and your estimate of it. The paper says that this was an estimate done in 2008. The administration is saying that you have an additional 800,000 square meters floor space, so you need more chilling capacity. I'd like to ask about the chilling capacity per square meter. Did you apply the same standard in 2008 and 2019? Chairman, you would know that we have global warming, and there will be more hot days this year than in 2008. Shouldn't there be an adjustment? Number 2, this additional DCS will attend to Kai Tak Sports Park, and in 2022, that's the target date for the DCS to be applied to Kai Tak Sports Park. I'd like to know how that can dovetail with the construction period. Does Kai Tak Sports Park itself have any standby cooling system? Because if you cannot complete on time, it will still be okay. It's a technical issue. Can I defer to EMS? Deputy Director, Mr. Harry Lai. Thank you for the question. About the chilling requirement for floor space, our estimate was based on different types of buildings. If it is a commercial building, or if it is an acute hospital or a children's hospital or a sports park or a government building, we will make use of the latest data to do the estimation. Certainly, as you said quite correctly, the performance of buildings might have improved since 2008, so we use the latest data. As for standby system, members might have visited our facilities before. Our generation units have been put together, so we have enough standby generators. And we have used different piping design. If there is a problem with the main piping system, we also have standby pipes to provide chilling. Actually, since 2013, when we started operation, the reliability of the system is 99.99% or world class. Well, Chairman, my question was very simple. Just continue. I have wanted to have a figure. The EMS said they have used different bases for estimates for different types of buildings. Can you give us the figures? Can you supply a paper after the meeting? Yes. Okay, please give a paper to answer Mr. Chu's questions. Dr. K.K. Kwok, second round, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Actually, there was a DCS. There was stage 1. How much electricity consumption there was for per kilowatt hour of chilling? And also, are you going to recoup cost? Since this will have a span of 30 years, during that period, well, as you can imagine, there would have to be maintenance of the generation units, and fuel costs will just go up. That's the trend. Now, you're going to stipulate a charge for this DCS. I'd like to know whether you can reassure us that there will be a balanced budget. This is what you are telling us from your estimation, but I'd like to ask you about what has happened since stage 1. Number 2, in stage 1, there were major errors, if you remember. The 4.9 billion worth of new DCS had an incident of the bursting of a heat release pipe, and there was seawater gushing out from it. I don't want to say that that was some kind of shoddy works, but that is quite worrying. And there was the bursting of the pipe, and then the chilling system failed and it was flooded with seawater. I'd like to know, after that, can the chilling system still be good for 30 years? Will there be rusting or other kinds of damage? So you cannot allow it to exhaust its planned service life of 30 years. Mr. Lai, thank you for the questions. We estimate that the cost recovery period would be 30 years, and the charge will be set according to the DCS ordinance. We have a formula for calculating charges. We would have two different charges according to the chilling effect and also the chilling requirement. The chilling effect will be revised every year according to CPI. No, I was talking about cost recovery. I understand the ordinance. You don't have to tell me what it's about. So I was saying that the charge will be adjusted according to the formula, and also every 5 years we have a review to assess the latest situation. And then we will then be able to adjust the cost recovery situation. But what about the bursting of the pipe? The member asked a technical question about the system. Mr. Lai, would you like to comment? Thank you. Actually, at the development panel and also at FC, I explained that system. It was a leakage problem. There was the damage to one component, but it had no impact on the entire system. But of course, we reminded the contractor to make improvements, but there was no impact on the overall reliability and also the supply of chilled water. As I said, we have had the system for 5 years and the reliability is at 99.99%. Second round for Mr. Gary Fan. He is not here. Next one, Mr. Jeremy Tam. Second round, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chair. First, I'd like to thank the Bureau for answering my questions in writing, and this has been tabled. I thank the Bureau for acting fast. I now like to ask another question. In your reply letter, you gave us a table and you listed the estimated recurrent costs and actual recurrent costs from 2012 to 2019. You can see that the sums are much better than the estimates. Say in 2019, it should be $61.2 million in estimated recurrent costs, but now it is 25.4. So we think it's rather good. But then in the paragraph that follows, it says that it has actually deducted the operating expenses by the charges and fees received. In other words, this is a balance sheet, but now how should I put it? You are telling me that you are making a loss, is that right? If you agree to that point, then I will have two questions. As I said, for 2019, it is $61.2 as estimated, but now the actual cost is 25.4, so why is the loss so much smaller? We have this table covering 7 years. The system should run for 30 years. And you have some more years to go, but how can you then recoup your loss? Understand. Thank you for the question. In this table, you can see that after deducting the fees and charges received, these are the actual costs, and you can see that we are making smaller losses. Therefore, within 2-3 years, we believe there would be some income instead of losses. As you know, whenever there is a new system, there will be a lot of costs at the beginning, and then the revenue will rise gradually. after it is in operation for some time, there would be a break-even situation, and then we actually think that 2-3 years down the road there will be actual revenue, and this is aligned with our original timetable. So we believe the development is aligned with our original estimate. We have confidence in recouping costs over 20-30 years. Okay, I think this table is rather good. You are showing us with figures that you can actually do it. Before you go to FC, can you draw a similar table? Now, in fact, you have the estimates for the new system. And can you also give us a table for estimating how much longer you will need to allow it to break even? You may even show us a graph if you don't choose to tabulate it. Well, your proposal is very clear. I think they can supply a paper. Yes, we can do that. Mr. Alvin Young, first round, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chair. I am looking at the map in Annex 1. The part in brown are the existing DCS consumers, and those in blue are those upcoming DCS consumers under proposed additional DCS. And I can see white patches on the plan. Part of that is the C, of course, and then the rest would be parts of Kai-Tak which have not been included in the first stage DCS or this DCS. The Bureau is saying that they have a 10% contingent capacity for future needs, including those white parts in this map. I'd like to ask about whether 10% is enough. If later on there will be new buildings in these white parts and people need more DCS, will there be a third stage? If yes, will you have to come back and for like $4 billion or even more? That point first, please, under SAC. The present DCS is to serve government facilities and also non-residential business facilities. In Kai-Tak, there will be many residential buildings, but then those will not be served by our DCS. Therefore, some of the parts here will remain white. As for future estimate, I'd like to defer to EMS. Mr. Lai, DD, thank you for the question. We have included all known developments. The undersec mentioned business buildings and public facilities. All those have been included in our estimate. After completion of the entire system, 50 users will be using our DCS. Are they saying that they can confirm on record that we will not need a third stage DCS? Chairman, according to what we know now, that is by means of plans and developments, there won't be such a need. Chairman, are you saying that you have more or less decided on developments at Kai-Tak? In other words, in future, there will not be non-residential business users needing a third stage. That is why you can say you don't need a third stage. Chairman, let me put it this way. We can only plan according to information we know, and at this stage, we do not see any plans or need to expand the DCS. But this is based on what information we have now. Chairman, then can I ask a question of principle? In fact, you should have a comprehensive plan to develop Kai-Tak. You should know how many non-residential users there are. Well, I think the undersec was giving you an answer on that basis because he said he knew where there will be residential developments and where there would be business developments. Is that right, undersec? That is correct, Chairman. In other words, the 10% contingency would be more than necessary. Is that right? That is a big enough buffer, right? I think what the member is saying, that you should not see the need to seek further funding for DCS at Kai-Tak. Is that right? That is correct. Well, let me add a point. At previous meetings, some members said that if this is such an environmentally friendly system, why don't you expand it to other business areas? There was an answer given that the conditions might not be right, but they do not exclude the possibility. And I believe members would not mind expanding the DCS. But I think the answer has been given. Thank you for the question. Next one. Mr. Gary Fan, 3 minutes, second round. I don't object to DCS. I support that concept. My question is about the funding arrangement. In 2007, you mentioned it, and now 10 years have passed. At that time, we talked about Cheng Kwan O South. Now there is the Immigration Department headquarters, but then it was quite vacant at that time, and I thought that you should already apply the DCS to protect the environment. But then you have to think about the way how public money is dispersed. That is my question. The Undersec said that the KT Sports Park only takes up a quarter of the 4 billion project, and you said that there is a different design for the sports park, and you say there is a retractable roof for the main stadium. I'd like to ask about the changes to the design of the Kai Tak Sports Park and also the retractable roof. I'd like to know how that dovetails with the necessity for the DCS. Was that before or after the $30 billion approved back in 2017? Undersec, well, let me try to explain in more detail. The change is not necessitated by the change in the roof design of the sports park. But at first, in 2008, we made the estimate on the chilling capacity, and we knew there was going to be this sports park. Undersec, you are repeating yourself. I was asking about the design. Please allow the Undersec to continue. No, but then you had already talked about that. Mr. Gary Fan, you don't need to worry. I will be flexible with your time. Well, I said that was not the main reason, because at that time, we did not know the design of the Kai Tak Sports Park. At that time, that was in 2008. So we just regarded it as an average sports ground in order to make an estimate of its cooling capacity required. Now we have the detailed design of Kai Tak Sports Park, and we found that the chilling capacity would be much different than what we estimated it to be. Therefore, we had to increase the chilling capacity. It is because of any change of design, but rather, well, I was asking you whether that was after the funding approval in 2017. We approved $30 billion. Is it that you knew about it only after 2017, after we gave you the $30 billion? So it is not because of a change in design, but then you knew about it only after that, right? This is the question.
One by one, okay. Before or after? Well, I ask the EMSD colleague to speak on the detail. Well, yes, overrun, but please answer briefly. As early as 2008, there was the estimate. There was no detailed design. In 2017, when there was the detailed design, then based on the latest detailed design, we estimate and design the cooling system. That was before the $30 billion allocation. 2017, before the $30 billion allocation. I think the member referred to the time when the sports park came to apply for funding. Draw a line there, before or after the funding? Before the funding approval. And the funding approval is not very well in advance. Okay. Mr. Chen Chi-chun, your second round, 3 minutes. Let me focus on Annex 4. the table on the estimated recurrent costs. And this morning there was a paper as referred to by Mr. Tam. There is quite a big difference between the estimated recurrent costs and the actual recurrent costs. Why is there such a big difference? 2018-19 estimated recurrent costs 61.2 million, but the actual is $25.4 million. If you may refer to enclosure 4, 2022 to 2023 estimated recurrent cost $18.3 million. 2025 to 2026, $22.7 million. In the note, it is said that recurrent costs charges and fees received from provision of district cooling system are used to settle the operation maintenance fees for a DCS operator, so on and so forth. I just want to know how would the change in recurrent costs come about? As we have explained, recurrent cost is the expenditure minus the income. That's the actual recurrent cost. And you can see that in the first few years of the system, the recurrent cost is positive. As said by Mr. Tam, that's a deficit situation. But with the increase in income after a few years, then the income will be more than the expenditure, and therefore the recurrent cost will be negative. That is, it is an income rather than a loss. Why there is such a big difference between the estimated recurrent costs and the actual recurrent costs? If you look at our letter today, now, these are the actual numbers of the system. Our estimated cost is higher than the actual recurrent cost. That means the usage rate is lower because the development rate in Kai Tak is lower. That's one reason. And you can also see that the income is higher than we expected, and so we can see that the actual recurrent cost is higher. The actual recurrent cost is lower than the estimated recurrent cost. So will this trend continue? The estimate cost will be a bit will be 1/3 higher than the actual recurrent cost. Well, as for enclosure 4, that's about the system we design. We expect that income will continue to increase. The actual situation will be closer than our estimate in the future because we will refer to the development in 2022-2023. We believe that the completion time of the buildings will be more accurate than we previously estimated. Ms. Ao, my question is in respect of the coordination with the contractor. Suppose there is a problem or something is out of order. How would you cope with that? You should provide an explanation when you put the paper before the FC. My apologies for asking you to write more papers. Well, I want to focus on this. I hope I am not repeating the questions asked by members. I know that Mr. Fan had a similar question. In comparison with the last one, there is the issue of cost effectiveness. Now, $4.9 billion providing 300 odd megawatts, and now you are just providing about 200 odd megawatts. It's cheaper but the chilling capacity is smaller by half. So is it effective? If you want, why you need to break up the project in two? The sports park was proposed in 2009. It was said that it would be built starting from 2009. Now, when you had the DCS, you should have this in your mind, and you will include the Kai-Tak Sports Park into your DCS. When the sports park is not ready, you should earmark a certain percentage for that. But now you break them up into two pieces, and the capacity and the cost effectiveness is even smaller. Well, I think the content of the two are different. I think the cost effectiveness of the two projects are basically the same. Yes, the average cost is similar. The member referred to the two amounts. One is according to MOD. They are according to MOD. The old system started operation in 2013. It was an earlier investment. As for this one, this new system is newer. So the new one is not effective. No, it is according to MOD. But if we use 2018 as the basis, then they are similar. So you just blame it on inflation. Well, the cost is similar. Next, Mr. Chu Hoi-dik. 3 minutes, the second round. Last time, we paid a visit to a chilling plant of the Kai-Tak DCS. There are two chiller plants. Now there is a breakdown, which is the chiller building. Is it a third? And also there is a worksite boundary, and it is called Kai-Tak Nala, the silting plant number 1. So it is a work site, and will it be returned to the relevant authorities afterwards? Mr. Lai. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the question. You're correct. Mr. Chu visited our plant. That was the northern plant of the DCS. We also have the southern plant, which is in the existing, which is underground, the Kai-Tak runway. According to existing estimate, the two chiller plants or rather the two chillers have made full use of the space available in a chiller plant. Now we have an additional system, and it's 60% of the existing, and therefore we need a third plant, and you're correct. As for the work site, near the desilting plant, we've identified a site to build our third chiller plant. We need to use water to do the chilling, and therefore we make use of the discharge from the desilting works to do the chilling. So we put our site there. I have not visited the site. Is the desilting plant operating, or is it waiting for the DCS? Well, it is an operating desilting plant, and we need to do some connections. Mr. Wen, you have 4 minutes. My apologies, Chairman. I'm jumping around because there are several meetings. My question is on cost. Now, when we discussed the DCS bill, we were worried that we would not be able to recover cost. I want to ask the following. Now, the present arrangement is rather strange. The government used the lease conditions to require the users to connect to the DCS, but they can make a choice. They can use their own water chilling system and it is cheaper. If my understanding is correct, then I'm worried. So can you really recover costs if they have a choice not to use your DCS? The Undersecretary. Well, I'll answer the question in a two-pronged approach. From modern-day building design using the water tower cooling system, WACS, a water-cooled air conditioning system is not very effective. It cannot be very big. You can look at the industrial buildings in Hong Kong. And also in answering Mr. Tam's question, we say that we reply that the reduction in actual recurrent costs is faster, and our income is rising faster than we expected. We believe that according to our estimate, we can recover costs in 30 years. We are highly confident about it. A follow-up question. I want to ask more specifically. Now, the Undersecretary is just making an estimate. They say that there is a trend. So I just want to confirm whether it is money well spent. My first question is whether this will be applied to other new development areas. And as for this development area, the government buildings and public bodies used by public bodies using these buildings, will they use the DCS, and will your DCS be fully taken up by them? As for other customers, will they also make use of the DCS? Well, according to the law, within the DCS area, they will have to use the DCS. Well, I asked the government buildings and also public bodies in the buildings in Kai Tak. Are there anyone in the Kai Tak DCS not using, in the area not using the DCS? No one has turned down the use of the DTS. 44% is for the new acute hospital, and the sports park takes up 25%. The two added together will take up the majority of the new DCS or the additional system. Okay, thank you. Next, Dr. K.K. Kwok, your third round, 2 minutes. Chairman. Well, in principle, I find the DCS reasonable and should be done, but I still have 2 points. First, concerning cost recovery, estimated time frame 30 years. Now, 4.9 billion plus 4.2 billion altogether, $9.1 billion. After 30 years, they will do it again, right? Now the system will. The system only has a lifespan of 30 years. It's no small sum. $90 billion, $9 billion, no small sum. And after 30 years, it may be $20 or $30 billion. So is it financially viable? That's my concern. Another thing is the power consumption. What is the actual power consumption? And what is your original, or what was your original estimate? And is it energy efficient? What is the expenditure on electricity in terms of tariff? As for the lifespan and the future usability and power consumption, EMST will answer the question. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Lai. The system, now this is advanced investment. We invest in the plant and the machinery. So the money is on the machinery and also the pipes, and after the works have been completed, we don't need any further investment. And of course, there is wear and tear, and we need replacement. So you have to throw away the machine after 30 years. Well, the daily expenses we cover in recurrent costs, and then we will charge to recover costs. He has not answered the electricity tariff. expenditure, electricity tariff expenditure, and also efficiency. Every year, we've been operating 5 years, the annual tariff bill. I don't have it in hand. Please answer in writing. Efficiency, 2013 until now, we had an estimate. We save energy by more than 10 million units of electricity, or 10 million kilowatt hours. Dr. Fernando Zhang, your second round, 3 minutes. Of course, I'm a layman in respect of DCS, but I know that there are experts here. If you check on the internet, you can see that the DCS, according to overseas studies, in respect of reduction on carbon emission, that is effective, but it is very costly. After all, it requires electricity to operate. And as for power generation efficiency, if they can also reduce carbon, that will be better. Biogas steam boiler and absorption boiler, I don't know what they are, but they say that is more effective. But if you look at our paper, we have not seen such technology included because they are related to electricity generation. Now, concerning the DCS, in comparison with the technology I refer to, is our DCS more advanced in technology, or have you considered these new technology? Mr. Lai of the EMSD. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. The member referred to the technology. They have been taken into account in our design. If they are applicable to the DCS or suitable for the DCS, it would have included that. I check this, but we don't see the need. Let's say, for example, biogas. For this type of gas in Kai-Tak, we don't provide that. And it may not be helpful by using this technology, and therefore it is not included. As for absorption chiller, we made use of that in the hospitals. In this DCS, we've studied that, but we do not find that effective. As for absorption chiller, say in hospitals, in other institutions, when they need hot water, when they need steam, they can be integrated, and that will be effective. As for our plants, they are rather independent. Apart from providing chilling water, there is no nearby facility. If we need to connect the hot water to the hospitals, that will need more pipes, and it's not cost effective, and therefore we do not add it in our system.
The DCS would include these 2 hospitals? No? Yes, because it will be far away from the plant, cooling plant. If we have to provide steam and hot water, if we are to generate these in our plant and we to put through to these hospitals, it would be very costly. So that is why the hospitals would have their own steam and hot water generation. It will not be done by us. Yes, there are such equipment for steam and hot water generation in hospitals. Claudia Mo. Thank you. Point of order. Since I'm running here and there, I can only have listened to you on the cell and to register for speaking, and there are a queuing listed out electronically. But however, This is not so in room 1. Is this that such queuing electronically is not displayed in venue 1? Chairman, I cannot answer for venue 1. Well, this is the Secretariat's arrangement, so we should be able to see it for venue 1, where the national anthem legislation is being discussed. I'm relying on that to run around. Well, for the PWSC, we will list out the first 3 speakers on the queue on the system. As for the other committees, they may not be able to do so, or they may not do so. So I cannot answer for the other committees or the panels. Mr. Fan, you should rest assured, even if you are not here, we will give you back your right to speak, even if you miss it. Now, Claudia Mo, you have several overlapping meetings this morning. The National Anthem Committee, Bills Committee, we would run around and try to be there. As for the document 1, the supplementary document given to us, I don't quite understand why is it that the recurrent expense estimation is quite different for the real expenditure. Chair, that has been answered several times already. It's difficult to repeat the answers if you, well, because we were at the National Anthems Bills Committee, so I think the Undersecretary will briefly answer your question. Because in 2012, there is 17 million, and then it came to 6 million. However, there was about an estimation of 61 million, and then there was another figure. There are several. You have raised this question has been raised several times and answered several times. I was at the National Anthem Committee. I was listening also to the going ons in this committee as well. Now, I don't know whether I'm repeating this question. You are saying that by 2021, the charges would be sufficient to pay for the operation expenditure costs. You are very confident and optimistic, but you have not given us any specific figures. Has this been raised? Has it been answered? Yes. As for the efficiency and the recovery of costs that have been raised several times from different angles, I'd like to ask the Undersecretary to answer you. I have already answered it twice already, but I will explain again. From the table, the real expenditure, recurrent expenditure, expenditure minus the income would be the real current expenditure. We can see that there is a smaller figure between the two figures, the difference, because there is a slower pace. The difference is smaller because the revenues are better than we expected. That is why the recurrent expenditure is reducing very fast. So it will be in several years later on that will be recurrent charges instead of recurrent expenditure. So the charges we receive would be able to cover all the expenditure, and a balance would be struck by then, and then the recovery costs will be getting higher. So it means that you are not being over-optimistic. No, we can see that from the estimation and the real expenditure, we can see that the real expenditure is reducing very fast. So we are very confident for being a balance being struck soon. Mr. Hu Jiwei, we have a DCS for the first phase where all the pipes were laid. For the second phase of the DCS, and you're coming for approval of resources, I'm sure that you will have some new piping. Would there be a plant, one of the plant using the old piping alignment, whereas you have a new plant? Does it mean that new plant will require new piping? Are you increasing the capacity of the old piping, or you have some new ones? How do you go about it? So in the last DCS, there should be piping from the last DCS would go also to the new areas. So the new plant, is there any overlapping between the new DS and the old DCS? Can we have some plans for the piping alignments of the first phase and the second phase? The new DCS will take care of increased built area. How much remnant capacity would there be to meet the increased future needs? So what is the order of magnitude of your remaining capacity for future needs? Well, in the system itself, we have 10% what we call reserve capacity. And as we know now, and there might be new ones that we don't know in the future, this 10% will be able to meet the future needs. As for piping, the EMS would answer your question. For the pipes, we have an overall design. So we have such and such a DCS, and the pipes would lead to the users. However, there are lots of new users, lots of new needs, and we would need to have this new additional DCS with additional piping. You can see from the plan itself, you can see the red lines. In the first phase, I already asked why was it that the DCS could not be extended to the vehicle testing center. You were said that the plant was not enough to provide for the chilling needs of that plant. Why is it that this time you have not included the testing center? Thank you for your question. Last time, well, first of all, we had a scope. The vehicle testing center is beyond the area. So we're saying that there is a heart and there are arteries. If you have increased chilling needs, if it's within the area, we can include it. However, the vehicle testing is in another established area. It's difficult for us to extend it to there. Well, it is entirely new area where works have been done already. Well, for the footbridges and etc. Well, I think that it is very disappointed that you have not included that in your new DCS. However, the chairman said they have already taken that into account, but there is a problem of feasibility. Of course, we support that the new DCS should be able to extend it to other areas where you can repeat the same rationale. Well, we have already listened to the explanations furnished. Mr. Young, Elvin Young, a technical issue. There is enclosure 1. There is a plan. Where is in the lower corner you have 2A, B, and 2A2 and 2A10. These are in brown, existing DCS area, but there are red lines as well, which means that the pipings have not been connected. Why is it that the existing customers where they don't have the connections done? I defer to the EMC for the details. Mr. Lai? Thank you. Thank you for the question from a member. In 2017, there has been an increase in the chilling capacity needs to be in keeping with the density of development. So there are new existing added pipes that are now being included in this additional DCS. So new pipes and old pipes would be, to the extent possible, connected for synergy. So old and new pipes connected would increase the stability and reliability of the system, as well as enhancing the efficiency. So there should be complementary effects. I understand the complementary effect. However, for being a non-engineer, I don't quite understand. Why is it that you use the DCS, but there is no piping connection? So are you doing it now in one go? Thank you. The density increase of the high-tech development, it is not only related to one single area. It is the overall increase in density of the whole area. So if there are not enough pipes for the first DCS, then we will increase DCS, the new DCS pipes. So the lower left red lines are pipes that are being increased and enhanced, right? Thank you for members' question. Increase in density, where we can see that the green pipes are connected. However, for the red lines, these were not included in the first phase, and the red lines now are being added to meet the increased needs. Mr. Cheng Chung Tai? The DCS, for instance, they would supply the sports park, the fisheries agricultural animal building, then NAH, and also some commercial buildings. For the DCS ordinance, the capacity would depend on the contracts with the buildings. As far as the administration knows, the known buildings have specific contracts related to that. The Sparks Park is rather unique because there are 25 years of contract for operation. So the private operator concerned would they have detailed problems that could crop up in their contract for the DCS? Well, you may not have this extra or chilling capacity needs, but do you have some range of the extra chilling needs? Well, Chairman, so there is a DCS ordinance. Well, according to the ordinance, there are charges for extra provision. So that has to do with the works itself. As the chairman said, the DCS operation and charges are being stipulated in the DCS ordinance. So for administration buildings or the private land sale, they also have a stipulation where they have to be connected to the DCS. So there is no need for the contract itself to stipulate that because it is already laid down in the ordinance. There's a contract for the DCS capacities and DCS consumption. However, the extra chilling needs is another matter. Well, you have a contract. The ordinance has sets the DCS and the consumers' provisions, but for what about extra consumption? Extra consumption means that there should be a accurate prediction of the capacity needs. Well, we do not want people to have a lower prediction and going beyond that, and that is why we have such a provision. Mr. Oh Lok Hin, the third round, 2 minutes. Well, it could give rise to arguments. You said that the vehicle test center, since we do not have enough capacity, that is why we are not giving them this chilling water capacity. However, for the sports park, there was none, but you are now providing them with it. So in 2008 and 2009, the sports park was already envisaged. If the plan was well made, you don't need to have this proposal. Well, you can say that there is inflation. However, such a way of handling things is not ideal. For the DCS, since you are providing it in this area, well, you should provide according to the needs. Well, of course, we are not really crystal ball gazing. But however, I don't want to see 5 years down the road you are coming back for the DCS additional proposals.
Secondly, I think something is very unsatisfactory. In the supplementary paper, it says that the EMSD does not have information with regard to the unit cost in other economic entities, and they could only get the information from the internet. But this was 7 years ago. Are we still leading the world? Well, maybe we are really the first in the whole wide world. But since there is no reference, we don't know about the cost effectiveness. Well, you have expressed a lot of views, but I have not heard any specific questions asked. Well, some of the points have been replied to by the undersec before, but undersec, would you like to say something? Well, I'd like to provide some information in terms of cost effectiveness. Countries may adopt different technologies, and it's not easy to provide a comparison. But then the UN has given us some information. I think the United Nations is a good reference point. In 2013, a report of the UN said that the unit cost should be 530 Hong Kong dollars per kilowatt hour. And if we use our 2013 prices, then basically the difference is not even 10%. Therefore, we believe our cost effectiveness is comparable to other parts of the world. Well, I would propose to do this. There was a paper that was required just now, and that is about the efficiency of the system. Some supplementary information has been sought. I'd like to ask you to include this in that paper, and that is to let us have a comparison with other places in the world, including UN figures. Can you enrich that paper this way? And I believe you can satisfy Mr. Ngao. Okay, please, let us have the supplementary paper next time. Ms. Claudia Mo, 3 minutes. Thank you.
4點都預咗係㗎啦，咁但係對供冷
I believe the sports park has been considered, but what about the additional burden to the system as a result? Do you have the figures? Mr. Lai. That is the demand generated by the sports park. Thank you. We have acted according to the latest design of the sports park and estimated the required capacity. We don't have the concrete information here, but the cooling capacity required is known to us. Well, have you answered my question? You think? Ms. Mo, you were talking about different scenarios, including the retractable roof. Of course, roof, that has to be considered as a matter of the technique to be applied. But then I think the EMSD was telling you that they knew how much the demand would be. If you want to ask about the actual design of the sports park, then perhaps this will not be for the EMSD. Well, I understand. You might have the figures at hand, but if you don't, I was talking about general construction design. Well, you may expect to have open stadia, especially for soccer matches. If you have an open-air match, you don't need to provide AC, of course. But within the indoor area, will it be that because there is a semi-open design, there will be more burden on the cooling system? Is my understanding correct? Well, you are talking about different conditions and scenarios. Of course, this has something to do with the calculation of the cooling capacity demand. But Mr. Lai has already said that they know the overall cooling demand. But I believe the actual technological side is not something for Mr. Lai to consider. Well, maybe you can ask those questions on another occasion. Maybe you can ask the Kai-Tak Sports Park. Well, this system is going to serve the new hospital and the sports park. Can it be sustained? Well, I think that question has been answered many times. No, I'm not talking about who it will serve. I'm talking about its capacity. They say they have 10% reserve capacity. Oh, okay, 10%. No follow-up, right? Mr. Kwang Chun Yu, 4 minutes. Chairman, there are many meetings going on at the same time this morning. First, I'd like to follow up on Ms. Claudia Mo's question. Earlier on, we discussed this mammoth project, which is KTD. Well, if the air conditioning system should break down, it would be a big problem, and we have to ask the question now. Recently, there have been major infrastructure projects, and then we gave the money, and then there would be a problem. Remember the Chiangkwano Velodrome? It was built not too many years ago, and there is already water leakage. This may not be related to the item here, but I have to ask you whether you actually have the figures. Just now, you were asked about the proportion of cooling capacity for the sports park. We need the actual figures, and we're going to ask you again at the FC. Well, of course, they have the figure. Otherwise, they will not be able to tell you the proportion of cooling capacity that can be assigned to the sports park. Mr. Lai, thank you. We have the capacity of 178 kilowatt. This is for the new plant. This is different from what we estimated in 2017. So I'm saying that about 20% of that will go to the sports park, and then over 40% to the hospital, and the remaining capacity will be used for the entire Kai-Tak development because of an increase in scale. Mr. Kwong was asking about reliability, right? Well, it's not your problem because the original estimate may not be the resultant one. Are you sure with the 25%? Will that be again changed? Thank you. The information was given to us according to the design of the sports park in 2017. Well, too bad. Well, that is according to the approved design that was approved by LegCo. Well, you know that starting with WKCD and then now Kai-Tak, things can change along the way. And I am worried because I think that the hospital might need a bigger capacity than the sports park, because when we looked at the initial drawings, it was a mammoth project and it's a semi-open design. You are responsible to provide it with the chilling capacity, and then the sports park can build its own AC system. And this may result in some pressure on you. When will you know how the sports park itself will build its AC piping? In other words, if they have laid the pipes, will you be informed? Mr. Lai, thank you. Well, our operation is like this. We will use the latest data from the latest design, and then we estimate the cooling capacity, and with members' approval, we would buy the units, and then that would be in the central plant room. And then we are going to lay the pipes to go to the sports park. This is the same as with other users. When the facility is completed, the facility will have to provide a heat rejection system or plant, and then we will be able to link up with the AC system within the building. As to how the AC system is designed by the users, the user will design according to its specific use. And of course, they would have told us about the cooling capacity required at the beginning of the design. And we will let them know how big the heat rejection plant has to be. And it must be included in the building project. Next one. Well, actually, I'd like to supplement one point. The PWSC organized a visit to the central cooling system of the Kai-Tak development. What Mr. Lai said a moment ago, and that is the user will have to set up a heat rejection plant. We saw that at certain schools during our visit. And this side, they provide chilled water, and the other side, they would make use of the heat rejection plant, and then they can distribute air conditioning around the building. Well, the Kai-Tak Sports Park is a massive development, but the basic principle is the same. And members, if you're interested, we can have another visit and we can consider arranging it. Next, Mr. Gary Fan. 2 minutes, third round. Thank you. I have 2 questions. This is to follow up my previous question, which was answered by the underset. There was a change in the design of the sports park, and now they have a retractable roof. And this was done before our scrutiny in 2017. Now, if that's the case, then why is it that in that FC paper you did not disclose the relevant cost of the cooling system? And the administration also said that in the NAH of the new development, it will take up 40% of the cooling capacity of the new DCS. And you said that you calculated on the basis of the area. I'd like to ask you how you came up with that proportion or ratio. How do you do your calculation so that now you have given us such percentages? Right. Mr. Fan said that when the MSD designed the cooling system, and you said that we should have known the design of the sports park beforehand. But then in our design of the cooling system, we did not consider the possibility of changes. And therefore, there is a gap between our estimate and the final design. And that is why we need the extra capacity. But we have not considered those possible changes. This is for clarification. As for the actual area covered and how we came up with the estimates, I defer to Mr. Lai. Thank you. AC is used differently in different types of buildings, say a commercial building or a hospital. A hospital may have more facilities and it may require more AC supply. But as I said, if we are talking about an NAH, we got the information from the HA Hospital Authority, and we got the figure for the floor space, our floor area, and whether there was a difference between our original estimate and the final design. And then we calculate the capacity according to what our hospitals now require. But if it is a commercial building with the same floor area, the AC required will be lower because commercial buildings only require a simple AC system. But if it is a hospital or other venues, the cooling system required will be different. And the operation hours are different also. In hospitals, it will be around the clock, but then for commercial buildings, it will just be for office hours. So we do so according to the types of buildings. What is the ratio, say, for hospitals and for commercial buildings? We can provide the information later. At the panel, we provided similar information, but we can do it again. Thank you. Okay, supplement that with a paper. It is actually a very complex technical issue. We have to look at the orientation, the people flow, the design of the windows, and everything is related. It's a very complex technology when it comes to the AC requirement for different types of buildings. Well, it is for the engineering profession. And in fact, cooling systems are a special branch of that profession. But the deputy director can provide certain information, but it could not be too much in depth because it is going to be very professional. Next, Mr. Wu Chi-wai, 2 minutes, third round. This time, we need a 178 megawatt of refrigeration. It will serve 3 major items: the new acute hospital, the Kai-Tak Sports Park, and also commercial floor area of 400,000 square meters. I want you to tell me the ratio of the new cooling capacity to be assigned to the 3 different parts. And I remember in phase 1 of DCS, and also when we discussed the ordinance, it was very clear that the cooling capacity of the dome of the sports park was calculated into that. And now I'd like to know whether there is a difference between that and what we are talking about now, because it was a known fact. Is it that the difference is so big that the cooling capacity of sports park has to be again included in this project? In the sports park, there will be 3 sets of generation units. If I understand it correctly, I'd like to know where they are situated. Can we align the piping in such a way that we avoid duplication? And so the piping alignment is most effective for all 3 generators. And the commercial area may have another set of generators so that we can lower the project cost. Understand? The 178 megawatt. Well, I think we said many times that NAH, it will take up about 44%, sports park about 25%, and the remaining is for the commercial area and the extra floor space that will have to be served. And then the third question, the piping alignment. Indeed, we have a plan to connect with other piping. So we will have an economy of scale, and there can be complementarity. And if necessary, we can operate all the pipes at the same time so we can lower the operating cost. And as for the estimate in 2008 and why we need to increase the capacity, can I defer to the EMSD? Well, the time is up. Can you be very brief? Thank you for the question. As we said at the beginning, we based our estimate on the 2008 design, but then the design was not specific at the time. So we regarded it as an average sports facility.
In 2017, when we have the specific numbers, we found that there was a difference with our estimate in 2008. And there was also the new demand arising from the NAH, and also increase in building intensity, and therefore we found that existing plants are not able to provide the chilling service, and therefore we've found a new plant, and they say that they are the estimates of the ordinary sports facility. But in 2008, there was the idea of having a cover to be provided to the stadium. And the director also responded basing on the estimate. Why you say that now you don't base your calculation on this? Maybe the director can answer in writing. He said that he adopted an ordinary sports facility approach. So, is it just an open air stadium? Maybe at different times the understanding of the demand for chilling is different. Now, can you explain what's the difference between an ordinary sports facility or a dome? What sort of concept have you adopted? Mr. Lai. As I said, in 2008, there was no specific design of the sports park. We just follow the ordinary design. So it's a flat surface, not a dome. It is similar to other sports facilities in Hong Kong. Well, please produce a paper to answer that. We have a 4-hour meeting, so we need a break. I will come back at 11. So shall we have a break now?